Let's start with Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Honestly, this game is one of the most fun entries in the whole Assassin's Creed series. I feel like it doesn't get talked about as much as it should, but the second you start running around Victorian London as Jacob or Evie Fry, you realize just how much of a blast it is. Syndicate nails the feel of 1860s London in a way that's just incredible. You've got the foggy streets, the towering landmarks like Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament, and that gritty industrial vibe where factories are pumping smoke into the sky. The attention to detail is nuts. You can literally ride horse-drawn carriages through the city or scale the rooftops and just take in the view. It really makes you feel like you've been dropped right into that time period. And the fact that you get to switch between two protagonists, that was such a smart move. Jacob and Evie have totally different vibes, and it keeps things fresh. Jacob's all about getting his hands dirty and brawling with enemies, while Evie's more of a stealthy, strategic assassin. I loved switching between them, depending on the mission, or how I felt like playing. And the sibling dynamic between them is just great. The combat in Syndicate feels super smooth too. It's fast, it's brutal, and it's a lot of fun, especially when you're just diving into a group of enemies and throwing punches. Plus, the new grappling hook, total game changer. 1 second you're on the street, the next you're ziplining across rooftops like Batman. It's the most fun I've had with movement in an AC game for sure. Let's not forget about the gangs. I didn't think I'd enjoy managing a gang in an Assassin's Creed game, but it adds this cool layer of strategy. You're basically building your own underground empire in London, taking over territories and battling rival gangs. It gives you a real sense of progression as you take control of the city. And let's be honest, rolling into a gang fight with a crew at your back feels badass every time. At the end of the day, this game is just fun. It's not trying to be overly serious or bog you down with too many mechanics. It's about letting you loose in this beautifully realized world. Next we have Alan Wake 2. If you played the first game, you probably already know how trippy things can get, but this sequel, it cranks up that eerie, psychological horror vibe to a whole new level. It's like being stuck in a thriller novel that keeps messing with your head. And I mean that in the best possible way. So right off the bat, the atmosphere in this game is incredible. Every location feels drenched in mystery and dread. Whether you're walking through dark forests, creepy small towns, or abandoned buildings, there's this constant tension in the air, like something's always lurking just out of sight. It's not just about jump scares, though. It's that slow, creeping sense of unease that really gets under your skin. The game does such a good job of making you feel like you're never truly safe. The story? Man, it's deep. It's a blend of supernatural horror, psychological thriller, and just straight-up weirdness. You're dealing with Alan's mind unraveling, and reality itself starts to bend and twist around you. There are moments where you're not sure what's real, what's in his head, or what's being written into existence. It's this constant mind game that keeps you hooked. And what I love is how the game doesn't spoon-feed you answers. You're piecing together this puzzle, and it feels so satisfying when things click, or get even weirder. Combat is another high point. The whole flashlight and gun mechanic from the first game is back, but it's more refined this time around. You're constantly managing light and darkness, using your flashlight to weaken enemies before finishing them off. It's not just about shooting, it's about survival. You've got to stay smart, manage your resources, and stay on your toes, especially when the shadows close in. And the enemy designs? They're just creepy. These shadowy figures are unpredictable, and when they pop out of nowhere, it gets your heart racing. What really impressed me was the dual protagonist approach. You're not just playing as Alan this time around, you also get to play as this new character, Saga Anderson. Next we have A Way Out. This game really caught me off guard in the best way possible. If you've ever wanted a true co-op experience, like a game where you have to rely on another person to progress, this is it. And it's not just some side feature. Co-op is literally baked into the entire game. You can't play this solo, and honestly, that's what makes it awesome. So, you're basically playing as these two guys, Leo and Vincent, who are trying to break out of prison. But it's not just a prison break game. It's so much more. You get to know these two characters, their stories, and how their lives are intertwined. What's cool is that both players control one of them, and each player has their own unique perspective and role in the story. It feels like you're part of a movie, where every scene is intense and meaningful. The way the split screen works is genius. Even though you're doing different things sometimes, like one person might be sneaking around while the other is in a fistfight, it all flows together. And you have these moments where you've got to coordinate with your partner. timing a move or making a plan to escape or fight. And when you pull it off, it feels so satisfying. You really need to communicate and work together, which makes it such a fun experience if you're playing with a friend. One of the best parts? The variety. You're not just breaking out of prison and that's it. No way. There are car chases, stealth sections, emotional moments, and even a few mini-games that you wouldn't expect. What I love is how the story keeps building. It's not just about escaping, it's about the relationship between Leo and Vincent. The dialogue is really well written, and you start to feel for these guys as the plot unravels. Without giving too much away, there are some serious emotional beats that hit you hard, especially towards the end. The fact that it's a shorter game, like maybe 6-8 hours, is a bonus. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It tells the story it wants to tell, and it feels just right. Plus, it's a perfect game to play over a weekend with a buddy, online or even couch co-op, which you don't see much anymore. Overall, A Way Out is just such a unique and refreshing experience. Next we have Metro Exodus. This game is something else. If you're into immersive worlds with deep storytelling, this one's going to grab you right from the start. I remember jumping in, and immediately I felt like I was actually there, trudging through the post-apocalyptic Russian wasteland, feeling every bit of that bleak yet oddly beautiful atmosphere. What's really cool about Metro Exodus is how it takes the series from the underground tunnels and opens it up to these massive open areas without losing that signature claustrophobic tension. You still get those tight, nerve-wracking moments where you're creeping through dark, creepy tunnels. But now, you also have these wide-open spaces that make you feel a sense of freedom and danger at the same time. There's something about walking through a desolate, snowy wasteland and then hearing the distant howl of a mutant that gets your heart racing. Artyom's journey is such an emotional one. He's not just trying to survive. He's out there searching for hope, for a place where humanity can rebuild. You can feel how much this means to him and his crew. That bond between them, especially with his wife Anna, really hit me. You're not just a lone wolf. You've got a family, a team that cares for each other, and that gives everything this extra layer of tension. You want to protect them, to keep them safe. You've got to constantly think about how you're using your resources. Do you craft more ammo, or do you focus on a new gas mask filter because the radiation's about to kill you? That balance adds a lot of strategy to the game. Speaking of weapons, Metro Exodus has some of the most fun, customizable weapons I've used in a game. They feel gritty and raw, like they've been cobbled together from whatever's available in this ruined world. You're constantly tweaking them, adding scopes, silencers, or bigger magazines, depending on what you're up against. Honestly, Metro Exodus is a game that pulls you into its world completely. It's intense, it's emotional, and it's got this perfect mix of open-world exploration and linear storytelling. It's an experience that stays with you long after the credits roll. Next we have Hogwarts Legacy. Honestly, this game is like a dream come true for anyone who's ever wanted to live out their Hogwarts fantasy. If you've grown up loving the world of Harry Potter, or just love the idea of being a wizard, this game really nails that feeling of stepping into the magical world. I mean, the second you get sorted into your house, it's like, yep, this is it. I'm at Hogwarts now. The school itself is gorgeous. They've done such an incredible job of capturing the magic and mystery of Hogwarts. You can literally spend hours just wandering around, getting lost in the hallways, finding hidden passages, and taking in all the little details. It's exactly how I imagined the castle would feel, like every corner has a secret or a bit of history waiting to be discovered. What's cool, too, is how the game lets you really craft your own story. You're not just following the Harry Potter timeline, you're in a completely new time period, which is honestly refreshing. You get to create your own character, make your own choices, and carve out your own adventure. And it's not just about being a goody-two-shoes student either. You can dive into some darker magic if you want, which is something I didn't expect but absolutely love. The combat is surprisingly deep too. At first, I thought it might be kind of simple, but there's actually a lot of strategy. You can mix and match different spells, use potions, and even summon creatures to help you out. And the way the spells are animated, like the wand flicks and the flashes of magic, it's so satisfying. You really feel like a proper witch or wizard, blasting enemies or pulling off combos in combat. One of my favorite parts, though, has to be the classes. Going to herbology, potions, or defense against the dark arts, just sitting in those classes feels so immersive. It's like you're really learning magic, and the teachers have their own personalities that make it feel like a living, breathing school. Plus, the way you interact with other students, make friends, and get involved in all the Hogwarts drama is so much fun. If you've ever dreamed of attending Hogwarts, this game makes that dream come true. It's pure magic from start to finish. Next we have Skyrim. Where do you even start with a game like Skyrim? This game is just huge. It's one of those games that just keeps pulling you in, no matter how many times you've played it before. You boot it up thinking, I'll just play for an hour. And next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. and you're sneaking around in the Thieves Guild or fighting a dragon on top of a mountain. First off, the world. It's absolutely massive and it feels alive, from the snowy peaks of the Throat of the World to the rolling plains of Whiterun. Every part of Skyrim feels like it has its own story to tell. And the fact that you can go anywhere, do anything, it's such a freeing experience. Like, if you see a mountain in the distance, you can actually go there. And you never know what's going to happen along the way. Maybe you run into a giant, or you stumble upon some hidden cave with its own little quest line. It's just endless discovery. The combat, well, it's classic Skyrim. It's not about being super fancy or fast-paced, but it's about choice. You want to swing a giant axe? Go for it. Prefer sneaking around with a bow or dual-wielding daggers? Totally doable. Or maybe you want to go full wizard, summoning flames and raising the dead. Whatever your style, the game lets you play exactly how you want. And speaking of choice, the quests are insane. Sure, there's the main story about you being the Dragonborn with the whole saving the world thing. But honestly, the side quests are where it's at. You can get caught up joining the Dark Brotherhood and becoming an assassin, or leading the companions and becoming a werewolf. There's just so much to do that you forget there's even a main quest. The dragon fights are epic, and when you finally take one down and absorb its soul, you really feel like the Dragonborn. Plus, the shouts, using the Thuum in combat or just to mess around, are such a cool mechanic. Fusrodying enemies off cliffs never gets old. Honestly, Skyrim is the kind of game you could play for years. Next we have Marvel's Spider-Man 2. If you loved the first two games, get ready to have your mind blown, because this sequel takes everything up a notch. It's got all the web-swinging, action-packed, open-world goodness from the first game, but with some seriously awesome upgrades that make you feel even more like Spidey. First off, swinging through New York again? Man, I could do that for hours. The way they've refined the web-swinging mechanics is just so smooth. You're gliding through the city, flipping between skyscrapers, and pulling off crazy mid-air tricks. There's this new web glider thing that lets you cover so much ground so fast. It's like Spidey's flying, and it's the best feeling when you're cruising over Central Park or zipping through tight alleyways. It makes you feel unstoppable, and you'll never want to use fast travel. And this time, you get to switch between Peter and Miles, which is a game changer. Both of them have their own fighting styles and unique abilities, so it never feels repetitive. Peter's got his classic gadgets, but now he's also rocking those symbiote powers that just feel brutal. You can really feel the strength when he's using them. It's like he's just tearing through enemies. And then you've got Miles, who's all about that flashy Venom energy. I loved how you could seamlessly switch between them, depending on the mission or just how you wanted to play. The combat, too, has been seriously upgraded. It's fast, fluid, and makes you feel like you're choreographing these epic battles. You're pulling off these crazy combos, switching between gadgets, and using your environment to take down enemies in the most creative ways possible. With the new abilities, you've got so many options to mix things up. I'd be in the middle of a fight, and suddenly remember I could pull out a symbiote attack or zap a bunch of enemies as Miles. It's all about finding your style and going full Spidey. New York itself feels more alive than ever. It's not just a playground for your web swinging. It's full of little details, side missions, and random events that make it feel like a living, breathing city. You can help out civilians, chase down bad guys, or just explore and find hidden collectibles. Next we have Days Gone. I'll admit, when I first heard about it, I wasn't expecting too much, but once I started playing, I got hooked. It's one of those open-world games where you get so lost in the world that hours just fly by. And let's be real, who doesn't love a good post-apocalyptic story with zombies? Or I guess freakers in this case. The thing that stands out to me the most is the world itself. Oregon, but post-apocalyptic. It's both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. You're riding your bike through these gorgeous landscapes, like snow-capped mountains and dense forests, but you know danger is lurking around every corner. It's such a cool mix of peaceful and intense. I remember just cruising down the highway at sunset, only to get ambushed by a freaker horde or a pack of wolves out of nowhere. Speaking of the bike, Days Gone really makes it feel like your best friend. I know it sounds weird, but you're constantly upgrading it, maintaining it, and using it to get out of some really tight spots, Running out of gas in the middle of nowhere, with freakers closing in, is one of those moments where you're like, okay, this is serious. But when you've got your bike tuned up and ready to go, it's an absolute blast to just ride through the wilderness, wind in your hair, dodging obstacles and escaping enemies. And then there's Deacon. I didn't expect to get so attached to his story, but as the game went on, I really started to feel for the guy. He's got this rough, no-nonsense exterior, but you see him struggle with loss, love, and survival. He's not your typical hero, but that makes him so much more relatable. The freaker hordes, though, insane. The first time you run into one, it's pure panic. I'm talking hundreds of freakers coming at you all at once, and you have to figure out how to take them down, or just run for your life. It's intense. But once you get the hang of it, laying traps, leading them through choke points, and picking them off one by one, it becomes this awesome strategic challenge. You feel like a total badass when you finally wipe out a horde. In the end, Days Gone is this mix of survival, exploration, and emotional storytelling that really sticks with you. Next, we have Batman Arkham Knight. If you're into Batman even a little bit, this one really delivers. It's the final entry in the Arkham series, so there's a lot riding on it. And let me tell you, it wraps things up in the most satisfying way. First off, the gameplay. You're not just playing as Batman, you're feeling like Batman. The fluid combat, the way you can string together attacks, counters, gadgets. It's all so smooth. Honestly, once you get the hang of it, you feel like a superhero, effortlessly taking down waves of thugs. It's like the perfect balance of tactical and badass. And then there's Gotham City. I mean, this is the Gotham I've always imagined. The atmosphere is spot on. Rain pouring down, neon lights reflecting off the streets, all with that dark, brooding vibe. It's eerie, but alive, if that makes sense. The city feels like it's its own character. Plus, the freedom to glide through the skyline or hop in the Batmobile just makes you feel like you own the place. Speaking of the Batmobile, I know people have mixed feelings about it, but come on, it's the freaking Batmobile. The controls can be a bit clunky at first, but once you get used to it, it's pretty fun blasting through the streets or shifting into battle mode. It adds a new dimension to the game, especially with those tank battles, even though they can get repetitive after a while. The story is where Arkham Knight really shines for me. Without spoiling too much, it's got everything. A psychological thriller, action-packed moments, and that emotional depth you wouldn't expect from a superhero game. You really get into Bruce Wayne's head, and by the end, it's honestly a bit emotional. What's also cool is the side missions. You're not just doing filler quests. They're full of Batman's iconic villains like Two-Face, Penguin, Riddler, and the side quests are all connected to them in unique ways. So, you're constantly feeling like you're unraveling something bigger. All in all, Arkham Knight is just epic. It's the kind of game that reminds you why Batman is such an iconic hero. You've got the combat and a seriously engaging storyline. Next, we have Dark Souls 3. This game is like a test of your patience, skill, and determination, but in the most rewarding way. It's tough, no doubt about it, but that's what makes it so satisfying. If you're into games that push you, Dark Souls 3 is an experience you won't forget. First off, the world. The atmosphere in this game is just something else. Every area feels heavy with history. Like the ruins and castles you walk through have seen centuries of battles and chaos. There's this haunting beauty to it, you know? You're walking through these desolate, crumbling places, but at the same time, they're gorgeous. It really pulls you in, like you just want to explore every corner, even if it means getting your ass kicked. And speaking of getting your ass kicked, the combat. Man, it's brutal. But once you get the hang of it, it's like a dance. You can't just go in swinging like in other games. Timing, dodging, and learning your enemy's moves are key. Every fight, whether it's a basic enemy or one of those insane bosses, feels like a challenge that you're either going to conquer or get humbled by. One thing I love about Dark Souls 3 is how it respects you as a player. It doesn't hold your hand or give you a bunch of tutorials. You're just thrown into this dark, dangerous world and expected to figure it out. At first, it's super intimidating, but you start picking up on little things. The lore, how the world is connected, the strategies you need to survive. It's almost like you're part of a secret club where you learn by trial and error, and the payoff is huge. The boss fights are insane. They're not just big bad enemies. They're these epic encounters where you feel like you're up against monsters straight out of nightmares. And the designs? So cool. The way they move, the music, the build-up, it all just adds to the intensity. When you're battling someone like the Abyss Watchers or Pontiff Sulivan, it's like a dance with death. But man, when you win, it's like you've overcome the impossible. So yeah, Dark Souls 3 is tough, but that's the point. It's a game that challenges you in a way that few others do. Trust me, once you've beaten your first boss, you'll be hooked.